Y estamos. Vale, voy a bajar un poquito. Me he puesto esta cámara muy grande. Pero en teoría ya estamos ready. De momento solo estoy yo. Me falta el resto de la compañía todavía, que irán viniéndose a lo largo de las diferentes conferencias. Takes-Two nos toca cubrirla, me toca cubrirla solito. Así que espero que me des compañía, que estoy muy solo. Buenísimas, Dante, gracias por pasarte. Anda, mira qué rima. Y si os parece bien, vamos a poner de fondo, mientras esperamos a que venga la de Takes-Two, que la tengo ya aquí preparada. Vamos a hacer así. Y os voy a ir enseñando la de Forza de ayer, que me pareció como uno de los más tochos.
I'm Mike Brown.
He puesto bajito, eso sí. Para tenerlo así de fondo y tener algo que vamos viendo mientras de fondo hasta que llegue la chicha. Que se empezamos ahí cuarto con Takes-Two, que no esperamos ningún anuncio decente de Takes-Two. Ahora puede ser todo bastante sosito, pero bueno, nunca se sabe cuándo puede dar una sorpresa.
Rendered in unparalleled detail and with ray tracing in Forza Vista, thanks to the power of the Xbox Series consoles.
Entonces, ¿qué esperamos hoy? Pues los indies que muestran a las 9, si no me equivoco. Ahora mi horario. Y Capcom, que es la grande de hoy, que es la que esperamos que vaya a poner cosas chulas. Voy a dejar un poco brillar la cámara porque ahora mismo parezco el fantasma de las E3 pasadas.
Hey everyone. Hey, what's up, Mike?
And we also have Abraham with us as well. He's one of the talented actors who will be appearing in the game.
Ahora mejor. Sigo teniendo un poco de cara de fantasma, ¿vale? Sigo teniendo un tono ridículamente blanco, pero...
We begin in the rainforest on an expedition.
Bueno, eso, déjame ahí, ya
This is
está.
a new campaign mode in which you set out on an adventurous journey across Mexico to
Y
explore
de Capcom,
new
que
locations and discover
esperamos, un poco lo hemos estado hablando, posiblemente una versión real virtual de Resident Evil 8. De me cree no hay ninguna esperanza que vayan a anunciar nada nuevo, está muy reciente todavía la versión Ultimate de nueva generación con Virgil. Monster Hunter, posiblemente veamos otro trailer de Stories 2 para vendérnoslo ya del todo, cara al mes que viene. En Rise no tendremos anuncios, si toca apostar.
That's a peek at our adventurous campaign. But Forza Horizon has always
Y tampoco sé qué más podemos esperar de parte de Capcom hoy, la verdad, porque es la más grande de hoy, pero creo que tampoco va a ser una conferencia muy enorme. Sí, es verdad que Capcom últimamente está que lo borda. O sea, Capcom últimamente, estos años, está siendo una exageración lo que está consiguiendo. Que estamos viendo que esto es... esto del Forza, por cierto, es gameplay puro y duro. En plan, no hay trampa ni cartón en teoría en esto. Que incluso para la resolución que me permite transmitir Twitch o YouTube, ¿en cuánta calidad tenemos esto ahora mismo? La tenemos en 480 un segundo. Bueno, 4K no sé para qué puedo 4K si no puedo 4K, pero... Ahora sí. Esto se ve de una forma que yo sigo diciendo que es que el músculo que sacaron con este juego ayer no es ni medio normal. Esto va a vender una Xbox, que yo no soy la persona que se deja ya por el apartado técnico de la consola. Pero es que esto te vende una Xbox. Hostia, qué chulo. Parece que se han currado bastante la ambientación del lugar. Y de hecho, puedes ir visitándolo y todo. Tiene muy buena pinta. O sea, Forza Horizon es de mis favoritos.
While Don drives down to the beach, we'll jump over to the Gran Caldera volcano. Check out this geology detail, implemented with precision accuracy using photogrammetry data captured on location atop an active.
Si no explota mi ordenador, de todo este trabajo lo estoy metiendo. Vale, aquí puedo abrir Google sin miedo, ¿verdad? Y vosotros seguís viendo lo que tenéis que seguir viendo. Sí. Se queda aquí en las redes sociales y tal, que si no se me va.
In the distance, we can just about make out Guanajuato. Let's take a closer look. Guanajuato is one of the most beautiful.
¿Este lo enseñaron ayer o ya no me acuerdo de esta parte? Creo que esto es más detallado, ¿no? Del que enseñaron ayer. O lo estaba flipando muchísimo porque... Está flipante. Hay que estar atentos a la hora. Y 10 pasamos ya al canal oficial. Y bueno, gente que estoy viendo aquí, ¿esperáis algo de Capcom en específico o de otras conferencias que tenemos hoy? También tenemos Razer, que igual anuncia algo de hardware, aunque igual no cubrimos Razer. Qué rica la Coca-Cola. Sigo diciendo que es que esto podría ser perfectamente una cinemática de un videojuego de la anterior generación y estar al mismo nivel. Esto es ridículo. Notificación. Creo que se acaba de caer un follow y no he podido verlo. Percalandia, muchísimas gracias por ese follow. Se agradece mucho. ¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo estamos? Las notificaciones un poquito bajas, creo. Y por un poquito, y creo, quiero decir que las tengo bastante bajas. Y no me hace mucho más, es que se va a quedar así de bajas. Está muy bajito y tu audio también. Ya, es que voy a tener que hacer a la fuerza bruta esto. Que es subir mi micro a este nivel, que es un nivel decente, si no me equivoco. Y espero que no se escuche mucho el ventilador. Si no, tengo que quitar el ventilador. Y voy a hacer esto. O sea, esto, el vídeo está bajo aposta. O sea, el vídeo se tiene que escuchar así. Solo que, como está ahora de fondo, porque esto es lo que ya enseñamos ayer, lo tengo más bajo, ¿vale? Ahora creo que se tendría que escuchar decentemente el vídeo. Esto tiene una pintaza, por cierto. Va. Esto va a vender muchísimas copias del videojuego a gente que no era fan. Ahora voy a bajar un poquito ya esto, ¿vale? Porque hasta que no empecemos me está haciendo un poco de daño. Vale, pues ya estamos casi nada. Tengo... Si temas de volumen, si cualquier persona de verdad esté viendo esto y ves que un volumen nos cuadra, decidlo libremente, se intenta arreglar en un segundo, ¿vale? Que sois vosotros que lo escucháis de verdad, yo no puedo escuchar si se escucha bien o mal. No. Que se me pone un vídeo de Eurogamer. Vamos a pasar ya al oficial de Twitch. L3. Porque que yo sepa, Text2 no he visto que tenga un... ¿Estás con OBS? Sí, estoy con OBS. Nada, con la previa y en 5 minutitos empezamos ya con tal. Voy cotilleando, voy bicheando si Text2 tiene lugar propio donde hacerlo. Que yo sepa, no. No está que verlo en este L3. Sí, llega amarillo, llega amarillo. Mi audio sí, el del escritorio, de hecho, ahora, el del escritorio tengo que subirlo ahora bastante. Un segundito. Hostia, me he pasado. Vale, eso es un poquito más, son 250%. Es que OBS para que tiene un límite muy bajo de volumen. Muy bajito. Pero bueno, este cambio me toca. Sí. Pues voy a bajar un poquito mi micro para compensar y el directo se va a ser un poquito bajo, creo. Consecuencias que tiene esto.
Can I see the box?
Of course, I know. I'm like,
I don't think I've ever...
Yeah, do you want to put on white gloves before you handle it,
I feel
though?
like I should. I mean, like, I've never actually held a Chrono Trigger box.
I know. It's...
I saw one in Tokyo, in Akihabara. I walked around for a little bit, and I saw him there, and I asked the guy if I could grab it. He looked at me, said I was crazy, and then I left being, you know, in tears. But this is like a piece of history.
Yeah.
This This is super cool.
Greg, you can hold it too. I mean, I know this.
Actually, I know this is. You're setting me up for like when that guy shows the Woodstock ticket and tears it in half. I'm not
Vale.
touching that. I'm not ending up on live stream.
Me he hecho el caso para entrar, me tocó ver al curro, pues mucho ánimo, tío. Gracias por pasarte y chequear que todo va más o menos bien.
And
Muchas
it was
gracias.
one of the greatest RPGs
I know,
ever.
seriously.
To
Quítase
this
el
day,
curro, que
it's
se te echa
still
mucho
one of
menos
the
aquí.
greatest RPGs, like top 5.
Que me siento mal haciendo yo esto. No soy yo el que lleva aquí el twist de Navi.
I want to
Nuevamente.
say real quick that, and this is a reformed Sega kid speaking, that like video games made me who I am today. Obviously, it's my entire life, my entire career, my entire passion.
Yeah.
But like, I always look so
Vale,
longingly
Take-Two
at people who were Nintendo
Interactive.
kids. Because you have, like, because I feel like you just, I feel like you guys had a different education, and that's not to say Sega didn't. But
No
like,
veo
I
que
was a
hayan hecho un
dumb
canal
kid.
oficial, la verdad,
No
para
one
esto.
else liked video games as
Que
much as I
Take-Two
did. So
me lo
I was just
esperaba.
playing licensed stuff all the time, which got me like Castle Illusion.
Así que nos va a tocar verlo en vídeo y os voy traduciendo yo, ¿vale?
Jurassic Park game and all these other Independence
Streets
Day
of
on
Rage,
Sega Saturn.
baby.
Dude, I love Streets of Rage.
Yeah.
Me and Mike
Started on
Boylan, I remember that on Genesis sitting there. I remember having the blood in Mortal Kombat, being super stoked.
Está por
Battletoads
aquí.
versus Double Dragon, Sega Genesis. That game was freaking impossible. But oh man, and Lion King, by the way. Big shout out to my
Very
buddy Sancho
impossible.
West, who just finished
Que
Lion
creo,
King
vamos, que
recently.
es
Oh,
el
Sancho West is my
de...
buddy.
Creo que
Okay,
este
well,
canal
he's
saldrá,
actually
digo
my
yo,
friend,
lo sería, ¿no?
But he's like a
This
kind
is
of
what
funny best
happens
friend.
when I
He supports
can't
us on
sit between
Patreon.
them.
Like,
Darn it, son! Sancho, I believed in you.
I won. It's all me. I won. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, what are your favorite 90s games? Let us know with the hashtag E32021 so we can get you up on screen. But still to come here on the E3 stage, we've got our indie showcase, Capcom, and so much more. Party's just getting started, so don't go anywhere.
Sí, no, que ya empieza. Vale, no estaba loco. Empezamos en 2:40. Con el Takes-Two, ¿qué es eso? Esperamos una conferencia flojita, nada así muy tocho, muy importante. Sorprendería que ahora se anunciara un bombazo. De hecho, mira, aquí lo tenemos. La cobertura de Take-Two Interactive es más un panel donde hablarán de temas con diversidad e inclusión, que no va a haber ningún bombazo ni nada. Vas a ser, pues mira, no va a venir muy bien como previa al día, empezar tranquilitos. Vale, un segundo, se le hice eso sin querer. Es que quiero ver. Sí, vale, ese canal de 3 oficial donde se cubre. Pues estamos ready. No sé qué estamos viendo ahora mismo.
自成立以来，Gogo 营地在全网的内容浏览量已经超过5亿，服务了数百万的读者和玩家。
Algún patrocinado supongo estos de L3. Una antigua aplicación de prensa. Tiene toda la pinta, ¿no? Un Metacritic básicamente de...
GameBonfire.com 来加入游戏闯火者的行列。
Esto con los test y tal. De hecho, vamos a ir ya haciendo esto. ¿Qué tienen que ofrecernos?
As a part of Play for All, GameSpot will be bringing you the latest gaming news and announcements, interviews with developers, the biggest press conferences,
Vale, si
and
tú sigues en la
lots
aplicación
more.
esta, vale,
Play
si es
for
una...
All is our yearly online event that
Ah, no,
combines
perdón.
the excitement and announcements of E3 with charity live streams the following week with lots of special guests who are going to help us raise money.
Un evento de GameSpot es esto, ¿no?
So join us in June for E3 and Play for All on GameSpot.com.
Sí,
YouTube.com/GameSpot,
evento de GameSpot, por si os
twitch.tv/GameSpot,
interesan entrevistas, eventos
and as a
benéficos y
part
tal,
of E3's official
que van a ir
podcast.
llevando, que eso siempre mola, siempre se
I remember
agradece.
this one time I was at E3 on a sitting there for lunch, and we were just sitting there eating, and then we talked business, then we started talking games. I remember talking about Assassin's Creed, and I was saying how I snuck in the room, I climbed on the wall, then I jumped down, I took the knife and I stabbed the person in the back. I looked over to my left and I saw these people talking.
Sí,
They
está
were
ya
talking,
esto.
then they stopped
La
listening.
censura sutil que le han hecho al lado del cuarto.
What is he talking about? He just talking about killing somebody.
Que me está
I said,
recordando a
"It's
lo
video
de...
game." They're like, oh, okay. I'm like, man, these people thought I killed somebody. They thought I was a hitman. I was like, oh, this is too funny.
¿Ya ha empezado en teoría? Sí, empieza ahora en teoría.
Thanks to our sponsors at DoorDash. Get more from your neighborhood, from restaurants and convenience to grocery and corner stores. All right, folks. Well, we are back here at E3 2021, and guys, sometimes the most difficult discussions, are the ones that you need to have the most. And with the gaming community already being such a diverse place, it's time for the creative space to reflect that. So here's take 2 with an important discussion on the necessity of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the corporate responsibility to honor those things.
Perfecto. Teníamos un solo para menos las voces. Eso es un panel básicamente sobre la diversidad y demás. Puede estar interesante. No vamos a ver ningún anuncio importante de ningún juego, pero ya lo sabíamos que aquí no iba a haber nada.
Vice President of Corporate Communications and Public Affairs for Take-Two Interactive. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to Virtual E3 2021. Take-Two, like many organizations, is deeply committed to and actively involved in numerous initiatives to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion within our
se está
society
presentando y
and
que
industry.
Take-Two quieren potenciar el aspecto de la inclusividad y
It's a
demás.
continuous process, and there is no one solution that can achieve that goal. We believe that to enact change, especially for those in underserved and underrepresented communities, there needs to be a continuum of activism and engagement.
Activismo constante para la inclusión y la diversidad y que no simplemente no hay una solución fija. De momento tiene sentido que están diciendo. Me sorprende que venga de Take-Two, pero me gusta.
Continuing through middle and high school, we can support and nurture students during their formative years and increase the depth of their skills that can provide a pathway
y empezar a ayudar desde la educación secundaria, está comentando.
400+ colleges and universities within the United States that offer degrees in game design. Providing opportunities to attend these academic institutions, including need-based financial support, is also a critical component to helping end generational cycles of inequality. And while pursuing their creative and technical degrees, students can learn firsthand from industry leaders that share their experience,
y que luego pueden aprender de primera mano de gente de la industria que ya tiene experiencia y que ya sabe. Todo muy básico de momento, o sea, son cosas que están bien, pero que siempre ya hemos escuchado en todos lados. Eso hay que ayudar desde una década antes de que empiecen profesionalmente a trabajar.
It allows us to make better entertainment experiences that are authentic, culturally relevant, and reflective of the audiences that enjoy them. Today, we have brought together a few of our important partners who will share their organization's mission and role in this endeavor, as well as their insights on how we as an industry can continue to take these important steps together for the future.
Vale, sí, que trabajamos como industria para que el futuro mejore. De momento, pues eso, está siendo un discursito muy básico, que se agradece que tenga un momento aquí en el E3 con todos los anuncios y tal, pero...
Thanks, Alan. It's my pleasure to be your moderator for today's session. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce my esteemed panelists today. We're going to start off with Jim Huntley. Jim Huntley is currently the professor and head of marketing at USC. Jim is a faculty advisor and he's an executive producer for USC Games Expo and a co-founding partner of PathView Gaming. Next, we have Susanna Pollack.
Susanna is the
president of Games for Change, which is a nonprofit that empowers game creators and social innovators to drive real-world impact.
Susana, que participa en Games for Change, que es una organización precisamente de este tema para ayudar a la diversidad.
Gordon is a professor of practice of cinematographic arts at USC. He is also the head of USC Bridge Incubator, which is a program that helps to cultivate the next generation of leaders in the video game industry. And last, next to Gordon, we have Layla Shabir. Layla is the founder of Girls Make Games, which offers a series of summer camps, workshops, and game jams designed to inspire and inspire the next generation of designers, creators, and engineers. Welcome to all of you, great panelists, and thank you so much for joining our important discussion today. Now, I'd like to dive right in here. And Jim, I'm going to start with you. In Alan's opening, he mentioned something that was so important, and it was really just talking about the increasing role that diversity, equity, and inclusion it is playing in the video game industry today. So before we get into the big concepts that we're talking about here, let's just break some things
supongo que esto
down for our viewers.
está ardiendo ahora
Jim,
mismo
can you help us
de
understand
mosqueo de la gente,
and
porque
talk
igual
about
mucha gente no se esperaba esto, de hecho.
equity and
De hecho, incluso
diversity
yo pensé que
and why it's
no
so
sabía que era
important
completamente
in
un
the
panel.
conversation about the video game industry today?
Absolutely. Equity and diversity has been a challenge for the gaming industry since its inception. It hasn't really changed very, very much over time, but I think the biggest change that people are seeing in the last 2 to 3 years are the lack of it in the modern era and the rationale that there's no excuse behind not having better equity and diversity in the industry from here on out. So what I like about working with companies like
problema de la
Take-Two
industria de los
is
videojuegos, que te pone un panel que puede estar muy interesante en ese sentido, pero
we started to call the Gerald A. Lawson Endowment Fund is that companies are now looking to invest in getting more diversity in their ranks and getting more stories told from different points of view.
I appreciate that. That's great conversation there. So let's talk about just kind of the inequities and why is it so important to have these conversations, talk about that whole aspect and just getting people in the right mindset to understand what's available for them as majors in this industry. Jim, just talk to us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So a lot of what we've been focusing on from a USC Games perspective is making sure that students of color, Black and Indigenous students in particular, because they have the least amount of representation within our industry out of all the various demographic groups.
De color, en personas negras que son las más marginadas,
no
que no se encuentran dentro de este aspecto del desarrollo de videojuegos.
It starts earlier than that. There's a phrase from, I can't remember who to attribute to, but there's a phrase that he used that I remember saying, the inequities of our past pay dividends into the future. And that sticks with me because the reality is if you don't have a great opportunity or access to computer science labs and specialized education in grade school and high school and junior high school, the odds of you having a great portfolio piece when it comes time to apply to a program like ours puts you at a deficit. And if that deficit keeps rolling on into the future, generation after generation, the gap between the ability to get into some of these slots in game design and not being able to get them gets wider and wider. So we need to do a better job as a society, and we are willing to do our part and help work with companies like Take-Two and Vanguard on how do we get students some opportunity from grade school. How do we make sure they can see this as an option? Because when I, as a Black man, get in front of a small group of grade school students and I say I work in the video game industry, you can see the eyes just their minds explode because they've never seen anyone like me and the videos they see on YouTube.
Dice que trabaja en un desarrollo de videojuegos que la gente se queda flipando porque es muy común y muy poca representación hoy en día, por desgracia.
But it's also important to make sure that the students who look like us, who are 20 years, 30 years, 40 years behind us, also have the opportunities that we didn't in some cases to get a job in this industry.
Yes, thank you so much for your insight. So important there. Susanna, that really kind of speaks to a lot of the great work that you're doing in helping to reach this underserved community. Can you talk about the work that Games for Change is doing?
Sure. So, our mission, as you said earlier, is to empower game designers and social innovators, right? To use games for social change. And we see our work with younger people as really inspiring the next generation. Right, and so just what Jim was saying, we're going as young as 6th grade, sometimes 5th grade, but trying to give young people, and mostly in Title I schools, so those are schools that qualify for free lunches, which often are representing the underserved communities, an opportunity to dive in deeply into this gaming industry, this
que se puedan sumergir, dar oportunidades para que se pueda sumergir la industria del videojuego como poder resto básicamente.
And we've been finding that it's a program that we've been running called the Games for Change Student Challenge. We've been running it for the past 6 years. We've reached over 30,000 young people in middle and high school. And we not only give them an opportunity to learn how to make games, but we also combine that with civic engagement. So they have to think about how games can help make their communities better. So right from the start, we want to empower them to think about this really important medium, not only as something they love to do, but they actually can make. They're learning important 21st century and STEM skills that can help them regardless of what career path. But what we really hope to see happen is that they see a future for themselves and they see an opportunity.
Y que buscan que pues que se busquen un futuro por sí mismos, si pueden encontrar futuro por sí mismos y demás.
Part of it is this idea of mentoring and mentoring from near peers. And also from people
lo que sí que estoy viendo es que esto tiene un recibimiento horrible. Pero horrible. Yo entiendo que esto no interesa a mucha gente, ahora mismo todos los espectadores, o sea, yo lo entiendo perfectamente que esto no es gusto todo el mundo y que mucha gente viene aquí a escuchar hablar de una presentación de juegos, pero coño, al menos respetar un poco, está viendo un cachondeo por el chat oficial que da vergüenza ajena ahora mismo.
And working in Atlanta and Detroit, and I can tell you that students are coming back year on year, and we're seeing them use this program as like their college essay, or they're building their portfolio. And I love the idea that, you know, if we can get to them at a young age, they spend their summers with Layla at Girls Make Games, and then they can go on and apply to college, you know, and we're talking about this pipeline or you know.
Vale, comentan que esto durará alrededor de 40 minutos, así que hasta casi en punto estaremos, unos 20 minutos más.
I love what you said there, Suzanne. There's so many little nuggets that you just pulled out there. The different avenues you can have and career pathways there are in the gaming industry.
Pasamos con un Indie Showcase que puede estar bastante interesante, el Indie Showcase, y después ya sí que pasamos luego con Capcom.
And just, you know, having good gamers out there. So there's so many things that you talked about that I want to hit on. Let's just pull Layla into this conversation and just talk about the idea of mentorship and representation.
Layla,
talk about the workshops and the summer programs that you offer to girls. How does that help to
de las mujeres y que están básicamente muy jodidas en esta industria.
Thanks so much for having me. I was on mute. This is
Girls Make Games, de hecho, es una iniciativa que sigo desde hace bastante tiempo, si no me equivoco.
Like Susanna said, I think it's really important to kind of pass that baton on. And I think we see this summer after summer, having created a place that's, you know, for girls. We get this question a lot. Why do you need a space that's just for girls? There's so many programs out there that are open to everyone. But I think it's just so important to create that space because, like Jim talked about, it's so important to see people who are like yourselves. For many of the girls that come to camp, this is their first time walking into room full of girls who love video games. You know, they've been so accustomed to kind of being the only girl on their robotics team, or the only girl that went to a coding camp with their brother. And the girl who's fighting her brothers for you know the Xbox controller. So those are very common themes and stories, and I think it's important to kind of tie in not just
que era la única mujer dentro de la clase no sé qué tal, o que la única mujer que hizo no sé qué tal. Intenta pues que encuentre un espacio más común.
And the best way to do that is to show many more faces that look just like you. It's really validating.
Y eso que esto también se logra por la representación, si se representan más a mujeres que están dentro de la industria, más mujeres están interesadas porque se ve que se pueden meter a esto.
In 10, 15 years and we'll be like professionals, because right now we're just kids making games, but we'll be professionals in a few years. And 7 years out for Girls Make Games, we're finally starting to see, you know, these girls kind of make plans together to go to college and this year, I would say, like the first time we got in like dozens of emails from families saying, you know, my daughter is now thinking of college and how do we get this portfolio going? How do we set that up?
Y que ahora están, pues que ha tenido muy buena acogida, que muchas mujeres están viendo como
that, you know, people have to go through just to get everything right. You shouldn't have to rely on luck so much. So if you look at the women
que muchas chicas ahora que en estas iniciativas están viendo meterse en la carrera para estudiar cosas sobre videojuegos y demás, lo cual, oye, pues siempre está bien escuchar. Ver cómo esto va mejorando poquito a poco, muy poquito a poco, pero
accidentally, like me and even Tony. I think Tony and I touched on that earlier. But it shouldn't have to be accident. We can actually intentionally create these pipelines, and I think it requires all of us working together, like everyone in this room, talking about what we're doing and how do we pass our students on from, you know, we start as young as 8, getting them onto the programs and then passing them on to the student challenge and then on to USC and then finally on to the industry. I think that would
la evolución de una chica que empieza a hacer juegos aquí y que le gusta y que va empezando a estudiar la carrera y verla como tiene que ser una profesional de la industria, básicamente es un objetivo.
And actually solution. You really clearly laid it out there for us. I really enjoy that. And something else you mentioned is just like really opening this world of gaming to new, diverse, a pool and a spectrum of gamers. And how do we create those real pathways back into the gaming industry? Gordon, you've done a lot of work in just helping to create value where value was not seen in places in the gaming industry, specifically for the gay gaming professionals. Can you talk about how the representation and widening the spectrum of what gaming professional looks like and how your company and your role really accomplishes that?
Sure. So we have a mission which is focused on education.
Está hablando de educación de personas jóvenes dentro de la industria. Que este señor pues es profesor de hecho, desde aquí arriba creo.
Diversity and equity inclusion, there's a new word that's come up a lot, which is belonging, right? A feeling of belonging, of
ese sentimiento de pertenecer a un sitio, de que no estás apartado, de que no estás marginado, que es muy importante generar eso.
People in their uniqueness do a lot of mental, socioeconomic, and sometimes social gymnastics before they get to be as good as they are, before they get a chance to participate in this panel or participate in our industry by and large. And I think the work that we all share is trying to disrupt some of those mental gymnastics, socioeconomic gymnastics, social gymnastics that young women, people of color, indigenous people, neurodiverse people need to do
que personas
in order
marginales, neurodivergentes y el resto que puedan que puedan sentirse que pertenecen a esta industria, que no están marginadas, que ese es el objetivo, que claramente es difícil ahora mismo y que es imposible, que ese es el objetivo.
Right, that treats each other as default, and where are we going to go now together, collectively? The program, Jim's putting in place, right, with the endowment honoring Lawson, where there's going to be cohorts of Black and Indigenous people, right, growing together. And the work that Susanna, you've been doing since before it was cool, okay? You've been changing games, making that dollar out of 15 cents before all of us. All of that work, and with the support of corporations like Take-Two, right, is enabling us to move a generation forward.
Que las empresas, por ejemplo, ahora mismo que Take-Two esté incentivando esto, que está llevando a que todo esto avance y que todo esto siga hacia adelante a siguientes generaciones.
Many have been girls who made games. And that's where we find ourselves intersecting, is at that college point of how
se centran en ese punto de la universidad ellos. Ya en el punto pues cuando el anterior de Girls Games es una dedica más a la juventud y dedica más a la carrera.
You want experts, right? And if things are going to really change, like this discussion, you need owners, right? Layla, owner. Susanna, owner. Jim, owner. All of you, owners of facets of your business, right? That is where we become the batter, not the frosting, right? Where the change is, more than we can count, 2%, 3%, 1%. We aren't even the ones counting, right? We're still being counted, right? Until you're doing the counting, nothing has changed, right? I don't need to ask, how many young ladies are in Girls Make Games? You're like, all of them, right? What is the gender balance of Games for Change? All of it, right? These sort of systemic changes, like that is the work I think we all share. I think it's why we all made time today, right? I've been to every E3. I was a booth boy when I started, and I'm still here, right? 25, 26 years later, haven't missed one yet. So I hope that someone out there sees this and begins their path, right?
Que eso, bueno, con la organización, con el cambiar todo, con el acá decir que ojalá alguien le esté viendo aquí ahora, él lleva 20 y pico años viendo de 3 y que ojalá alguien le vea ahora y que tome el mismo camino y que forje su propio camino y tal.
Accountability piece is really very important, Gordon. Thank you for bringing that up. I just want to lay this out there to all our panelists. What can corporations do to really set themselves up for success in the near future?
¿Qué pueden hacer las compañías, las empresas para
this talent out there that we need to capture to
help us build better, que no es un desafío, simplemente tienes que dejarte ser imbécil, pero bueno, supongo que es un desafío.
What can corporations do?
So I was thinking about this in particular as Gordon was talking about the scholarships that he puts forward. So having organizations, companies like Take-Two have a to be visible to young people, not just because they're buying, they're downloading the games off of
que la compañía sea muy visible es importante,
Xbox or PlayStation, but because they're there in front from the beginning. And so Take Two
y que
is
se
part
note que
of our
están
challenge
apostando por esa diversidad de principio, que es lo importante, que la gente no conozca porque ha hecho GTA, que también, sino porque que le conozca porque ha estado a la vanguardia de este movimiento.
But it's because Take Two is part of it. Like, it made us cool. Right, and I think it's that relationship at that young of an age that makes a connection for people. Is like, yeah, they want to hear what I have to say, right? Like, they're here because this program exists and because I'm interested in doing it. And I think that kind of relationship with these kids, whether they're mentoring and coming into a classroom, they're volunteering at a game jam, or judging games at the end of the competition, they're involved. And I think that it really has an impact on young kids' lives.
Yes, I love that.
I just want to add to what Suzanne's saying. I think that, and something that, we're talking about Take Two, and thank you for having us, is making the success of Black people, of women, of queer people, of indigenous people, neurodiverse people, a business goal.
Que puedan participar, que triunfen las personas negras, las personas neurodivergentes, las mujeres, tiene que ser como el objetivo de la empresa.
Buy some NBA 2K, right? That's a business goal around which the business is aligned.
Un objetivo del negocio tiene que ser la igualdad de reputación.
Of women, Black people, neurodiverse, other populations was a business goal, then that would be the change. It'd be that
sería el cambio.
Our business is more successful if there is more of this, right?
Que tiene que haber más de esto, que por la razón que están teniendo, creo que la gente está en desacuerdo con el concepto general.
Versus just being valuable, which are two different things. There's lots of exceptional people, right, who are of value in spite of their circumstances. They're valuable, right? There's a difference between saying you're of value and that's a business goal in itself. And I think that's the real change, because it used to be, just real talk, it used to be about exceptionalism, right?
Y que me gustaría agregar, esto está anunciado, esto ha dicho Texto hace un tiempo que esto iba a ser un panel. En ningún momento han dicho que esto iba a ser traer de videojuegos, en ningún momento, así que...
So we are going to cultivate you. That's who we are year round. That's what we look like, what we sound like, right? Who we are, right? And so as the lever moves more towards that, right? The same way, like, I have biases. I attended Harvard College, so I'm of value, right? There's value in that, right? I'm treated that way in some circles. If the same lens was put onto women, onto brown people, Black people, queer people, then there'd be no, as the kids say, no cap on the change that could take place.
Que se valora a la gente por ejemplo,
and that just speaks
que se valora a la
to
gente
being
de
deliberate
estas
with our
minorías.
diversity, inclusion, equity practices. Corporations really have to take that accountability and, like you said, do what's right in that
Los papás tienen que hacer lo que tienen que hacer, lo que está bien, y
looking
dejar
at
de
value
tal.
from different sources and kind of recalibrating our minds to that. But like you guys have said, it takes time. It takes starting earlier in the pipeline. I love that you just call that out. What other things can corporations do that are just different than what we've been doing in the past, perhaps? What would you recommend?
I would even add to what Gordon just said. The looking at this challenge as a business challenge is key. That's what between the inspiration of the social justice marches from last summer and really talking to our chair, Danny Bilson, who said that, hey, if you were going to tackle this issue, this giant generational issue, as a business problem, what would you do? And that flipped the light switch on for me. Well, of course, like any business problem, what are my challenges? I've got gaps in my supply chain, if you will. So how do I fill those gaps in my supply chain? And really working your way backwards.
Que enfocar esto como con lo que han dicho antes, un problema en la empresa, una prueba en la empresa, un objetivo a lograr dentro de la empresa y enfocarlo como eso. Desde un punto de vista de negocio, de un negocio, de una empresa.
It's going to be more of, okay, here's a check. This is what we're hoping to see. Let's measure along the way and see if we're seeing progress on that. And it's the measurement of progress and adjusting in real time based on the data that you're getting back. that's where you're going to see the gap start to close in a meaningful way, and be able to point out to other people in the industry, like, hey, this is what we can all do together. What if we scale this effort up and really had an impact on society as a whole? That mindset is really going to be what changes the game.
So I like to think about it as like a pie. You know, when we think about from like a corporate strategy, we always think about there's a piece of the pie and everyone gets a little piece of the pie. But I think the way we have to approach this is really, the pie is not a fixed size. I think by including more people, the pie gets bigger. So it's not a fixed size that we're trying to all get a piece of, but by including more people, you know, in the industry, by becoming creators of this medium, we actually expand the medium, expand it beyond just entertainment. And I think that speaks really heavily to me as a problem solver. Is like, when I look at video games, it's such an underutilized tool for social change, and I think like that I can see Susana
que el videojuego es una herramienta muy buena para el cambio social, que influye mucho dentro de esto.
Coming in as an outsider to the games industry, I was just kind of blown away that, oh my God, you can do so much. Like 9 out of 10 kids play video games. You know,
se puede hacer mucho, que la mayoría de niños, que 9 cada 10 niños juegan videojuegos, que hay que esos expertos, o sea, que hay mucho donde hacer.
Inspiring and educating generation after generation, and yet that power rests in the hand of like a select few. And I think when you think about it, not just from a corporate responsibility, but as a social responsibility, like what are we putting out there for our kids to consume? I think we need to bring in pretty much everyone, anyone and everyone who's interested in building a future together in that.
Que todo el mundo tiene que tener la intención de crear un futuro juntos y comprometerse un poco con esto.
Like I think there's a big
que por lo que se está viendo, la razón está siendo la
contraria. And these are people that are self-serving, but it doesn't work like that. We have to work together, and everyone does kind of go between what's good for me and what's good for everyone, you know. So
thank you for bringing that concept up, Layla. The codependency. We are all community members in this pipeline, and we have to be active, deliberate in our processes,
que todos aquí somos miembros y que todos tienen que tomar un papel activo y ponerse las pilas básicamente, porque si no esto no funciona y no hay un cambio, no hay un avance.
That we want to ask you. So I'm going to pause right now and give our esteemed questionnaires a chance to ask their questions that are top of mind related to our
y que ahora las personas de Tech2 van a hacer un preguntas y respuestas.
So we're going to start it off with some questions from our other video game industry experts here. We've got Carrie, she's an executive producer from Private Division. We also have Vanetta, who's a director of talent acquisition with Take-Two, and Nir, he's the head of mobile for Take-Two. So go ahead and fire it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. The first question is for Layla, but certainly open to having the rest of our panelists answer the question. But at the beginning of your career, did you ever imagine being a leader within an industry that is predominantly male-dominated? And what is your advice for other young women that are interested in taking a similar path to where you are today?
¿Qué consejo daría a las mujeres que quieren tener una carrera como la suya?
I don't think I really envisioned being in a male-dominated industry, although I did envision being in a male-dominated world, because I grew up
in the Middle East and I was painfully aware of being a girl,
and how my life was going to turn out to be different from my male peers, or my brothers, or my cousins, or any of that. I was fortunate that my parents were very supportive, and they wanted me to pursue whatever dream I wanted. But I think having that mindset and coming from a world that was very much male dominated already prepared me for, you know, hey, whatever I end up doing, there's going to be more boys or men than me. I think the piece of advice that I would really give girls is to honestly not think about your gender when you think about what you want to pursue, because it's all about you specifically. You might end up liking things that people, even your age, your geographic location, your, you know, educational background, or your family might not have heard of or even thought of. And that is all the things that I ended up doing were things that didn't match anything that I had seen in my own environment, but I just kind of pursued what I wanted to. And then 2 is to kind of use a very selective hearing I think you have to kind of develop selective hearing. Listen to the people that care about you, that love you, and
que es muy
encourage
importante
you
saber
in being
escuchar a quien
more
tienes
of
que
who you
escuchar.
are,
Escucha a gente que se
and
preocupa por ti, a
diminish the
gente que te quiere
voices
y no
of people who say you can't do
y que
things
ignores a la gente que
because
dice que no
it's
puedes,
never
que no
been
tienes
done,
razón y
or
que
that's not
no
how
te
it
escucha
is,
esa
or
gente.
that's not
Ten un
how
oído
the
selectivo,
world
dice que tienes que tener
works.
básicamente.
The way the world works is based on the world that we build, and we're
Y
continually
que el mundo
building a new
funciona
world. So it
como
doesn't
lo
matter how things
construimos
are done now.
básicamente.
They're going to be done a different way as you grow up, and you can be part of building that world. So those would be like my 2 pieces of advice for girls, is to just pursue what you want and, you know, develop selective hearing.
All right. My question is for Susanna, but also open to anyone else who would like to answer. And I think Gordon kind of hit it earlier when he said that, you know, most of us didn't have a lot of examples or opportunities. I'm in that boat. I didn't have any programs and anyone telling me that I could do this, and definitely had to, not necessarily an accident, but really had to work in a different way, harder than most. So, my question, Susanna, for you is, could you share an example of how your program has impacted someone that has participated, or, you know,
Que cómo su programa ha impactado a alguien que haya participado en él.
So,
a la persona
our
Games for
program
Change.
is 6 years old in New York City. We're
Lleva 6 años con el programa
in the
activo
other
ya.
cities that we're operating in, and there are opportunities now that kids all over the country can participate. But we saw in New York a very particularly strong cohort. We're actually in over 125 schools right now in New York City.
Están en más de 100 escuelas.
And there are some rock star teachers that have encouraged their kids to participate, their participants, year on year on year. And that, to me, is certainly the beginning of getting this kind of program off the ground, and particularly in schools where students usually aren't offered this kind of experience. So, one, having the teachers find value and really and work to and making it a part of an annual program within their school system has also allowed students to continue with the program year on year. There's one young woman in particular who won, I think she won the, our theme category the first time round when she participated as a sophomore. The junior year, she won again, and by the senior year, she was a grand prize winner in New York City. And I hear that she then followed on with a full scholarship to NYU Game Center, right? And it was just amazing. And I just remember she was invited to speak at the Games for Change Festival after she won. It must have been the second year. I don't think it was the third year. And she came, and we were having a panel, a conversation about, you know, the program, and she was invited to speak on it, and her father came with her and followed her around the entire, 2 days she was there with a camera, recording her experience in this, you know, professional environment, not only when she was speaking, but when she was sitting and watching the other people on stage. And it was so awesome to see that kind of support within her family.
Que el padre de una chica que hacía el programa le siguió con la cámara y esto grababa todo lo que hacía para saber cómo lo hacía y todo, y que le pareció genial ese tipo de apoyo de parte de la familia, que eso es un factor muy importante.
But it takes that kind of multiple supports from different directions to really support this young woman who is a woman of color from Brooklyn, who found her path, right? And she got the right supports, and she got there. And now I also understand that she's launched her own studio and is raising money, on Kickstarter. She's remarkable.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that story. That's so cool.
Nir, do you have a question for our panelists?
Yeah, hi, I do. So my question is to Gordon. I'm looking at LGBTQ representation in gaming. I've been in gaming for more than 12 years, and
ya en la industria más de 12 años.
That representation is a bit low than what you'd expect, what I see in tech in other sectors. Do you have some data or some thoughts about that? Is that the fair estimation? And if so, why is that? And what are the main challenges that LGBTQ individuals face in this industry?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you a little history here. So when we started GGP about 15 years ago, which is not that long ago in corporate times, queer people
15 años.
only existed on an anonymous mailing list, anonymous to each other. Okay?
Una plataforma
Because
anónima.
Employment safety, which is still a concern globally,
Porque
not to mention
no,
just safety, was a #1 concern which all of us lived
porque
with.
no hay
So,
protección de los empleados, que eso sí es un empleado de hoy en día, pero aquí entonces era
weird
mucho más
flex,
exagerado, la
I
protección de
had
los
designed
empleados.
Madden Football, had already sold a company to Activision. Employment safety. So that is the #1 reason why. And just in this new recent history, have we begun to build the trust and value in each other so as to aggregate and to even acknowledge each other, okay? And to build systemic ties to companies like Take-Two and others to move from hiding from the industry, right? Escaping from the industry, to affinity, right? Like, right? To employee resource groups and
que el cambio que ha habido de esconderse a tomar un papel activo, a tener una afinidad, a formar grupos y a ser un problema de verdad de la empresa esto.
That path is further along, where it is like to say in the batter that queer identity is of value, and there's customers, there's of course creators, there's of course business leaders and owners, you know, of all walks, and in the optimum business you would cultivate, you know, all types of people. As a game craft, we are still in generation 1. You even asking this question here, you are a wild pioneer. You are the out there with your machete chopping down bamboo to even ask this question, which presumes that LGBT people would be employed, okay, and then in communication with each other, right, in communication with each other across different companies, and in any sort of ongoing concern. So, welcome. Thank you for asking. For those of you at home, we have a Discord
que tiene un Discord
that you can
y un Facebook
all
donde
join and participate
se puede
at
unir y
any time,
participar,
or you can reach out to me directly on Twitter, Gordon Bellamy.
y en Twitter.
Wherever you may be on or off your path as an LGBTQIA person or an ally, right? Because I think that's something we've all discovered, and I think whatever population you are part of, whether it be across gender or race or expression identity, is that you don't have to be a member to care, okay? You don't gotta be a member to say this is an important issue. And in fact, a lot of the work that we do at a corporate level is saying, hey, you don't have to do all the work, right? You know how to push the rock that's sitting on you. We're gonna help you push that rock that's on you. It's not on me, but I can help push, right? Because I can see it. It's on you. And so asking these questions, corporate support, time, right? 3 T's, time, talent, and treasure, you know, will move this discussion forward.
Este tipo de cosas aquí que hace que el tema avance, que se pueda avanzar por este tema y comentarlo.
We can tell you more in greater detail.
Gordon, I know your company has some things going on in the few months.
Oh,
can you talk about some of the activities you guys have?
Sure. So we have most of our content now, in addition to our Scholars Program and our community service that we do with Take-Two, is streaming. So we stream from Twitch and we bring it to YouTube. Content around equity, inclusion, belonging, and
sobre contenido sobre la inclusión y la
we just
equidad.
had our second Indigenous Game Creators panel yesterday.
Y que tuvieron de hecho un panel de creadores de juegos ayer.
Has always been here. In August, we're going to be doing our first GGP honors, which is going to be honoring the best in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in our craft. So we're going to be lifting up the people who do the work, right, every day in our ERGs, in our executive suites, like Dr. Liggins, right? These people need to be cultivated as well, right? The same way that we cultivate engineers, artists, and other things that we value, right? Things that we value need to be cultivated. So we're going to be getting to do that work August. Tune in, front page of Twitch. It's going to be a mood. Hope you're all there.
Awesome. Thank you. We probably have time for one more question, so let's go for it. Who's got their last
que hay una pregunta hay tiempo para una pregunta más, así que ya estás llegando al final.
Oh, I have several questions.
Burn.
one. We'll just speak. I have to come from the affinity group, ERG, BRG perspective. So, Gordon, thank you for touching on that. So, this question is for both Jim and Gordon, as someone that represents a member of an ERG as well as a leader of an ERG. What advice would you give ERGs, affinity groups, BRGs that are either just starting out or those that are established in organizations that are looking for ways to further embed themselves into the business, so that batter versus fixing that you're talking about?
Also, I mean, to add to that, I think the something that a few of us have touched on earlier is an old adage from the business world: you can't manage what you can't measure. If you don't have a way to see how your progress is evolving over a continuum, you're kind of just going, well, I think something's working, let's just keep doing that. And business people, myself being one of them, don't respond well to that. It's just okay, let's just keep investing in a thing that I don't know the results of. You need to be able to go back and say, hey, this year we were here, this following year we were here, here's the, not only have we seen a positive impact on the investment or good ROI, but we also recognize the fact that the partner and partners that we're working with are making moves and making investments into the future that they're saying that they want to see. The positive feedback loop of being able to say, here's data that shows that what we're doing is having an impact on our objectives.
Que es muy importante que haya datos, un feedback positivo de datos que digan que lo que se está haciendo es importante.
That's really key to building a positive feedback loop around investing in diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, what Jim said, but I'd still say make it mobile. God, if you could move that needle like 0.2%, anything, you can't get cut. You can't get cut then, right? There's no way, if the budget's tight when you're moving that needle 0.2%, right?
No, the scale at which we all operate, it's pretty staggering when you think about it. When you aggregate how much revenue and profit goes and gross profit goes in the games business, for a meaningful moving of the needle of DEI, comparatively speaking, it's not a huge amount of money. It's, to have a really big demonstrable impact, measurable impact, if we aggregate our dollars and really focus on some key objectives, we can really move the needle in a way that's going to, frankly, when you start seeing things work, people get excited. It worked, let's keep doing it, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's
lo que se dice es eso, que se siga haciendo, que se siga haciendo, y esto es lo que hay que hacer, que funcione para que siga adelante y se siga haciendo.
And have an impact in the aggregate over time, over generations, and support students for decades to come.
Y apoyar a estudiantes en las décadas que vengan, todo el rato, entre generaciones.
Awesome, thank you.
One more thing, just to let it go, is just keep saying black out loud. Right? Let's get back to Black is Beautiful. We've been residing in Black Lives Matter for a long time, and we need to be back to like Black and Proud and Black and Beautiful. And so your existence, right? And saying it and saying positive outcomes after the word black is meaningful each and every day that you can do it in your ERG.
I love that. Thank you.
Good question. We've got time for more. What else do we have?
All right, I'll go if we have time for more. Layla, how have you been able to actually connect with the people in the community to bring awareness for your programs? Like, how do you actually gather people, to participate, and especially like in the very beginning?
¿Cómo reúnen gente para participar y sobre todo cuando empezaron, cuando comenzó esto?
In 2014, we literally barged into a maker fair with flyers, and we were just going around and being like, you look like you would love video games because you're playing with robots right now. So come to our camp. But I think it's pretty much primarily been word of mouth originally, but then when we ended up partnering with the game studios and game companies, that really helped elevate the program and the PR. I think Susanna touched on that. It's like it actually legitimized us and then kind of made us really cool. Like, hey, you can go make games at these game studios. You can actually make a game at Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, Take-Two. You can go into their offices, meet the developers, and make these games. And I think that cool factor has kind of really helped us out. when it comes to speakers and people who want to mentor and be involved, that's been a lot easier because, you know, a lot of our teachers end up being college students themselves, and they come back and they'll say things like, I wish this program existed when I was younger. It sucks I couldn't go to it, but at least I get to be a part of it and give back to the kids. And then same thing for mentors and speakers. There's so much interest in wanting to give back and wanting to welcome new voices into the industry. We haven't really had to do a lot of pushing. You know, in fact, we get pulled in a lot of directions. I was talking to my team the other day. I was like, this is a very fortunate problem to have. We're getting pulled in 100 directions because we're needed in 100 directions.
No tienen que ir ellos empujando su agenda, sino que muchas veces les piden a ellos, que les tiran a ellos en plan de ven aquí y ayuda, porque hay muchos lugares donde está este problema.
And really the tide is turning. You know, we're building a new industry. We're building on the industry that we have, but we're also building a new part of the industry together. So it's really exciting.
Thank you. Thanks, Layla. And thank you to our panelists. You guys have been very inspirational, very thought-provoking, and have left us with a lot of great tidbits to take away, to take back to our corporations and our respective organizations to really make a deliberate impact in our community that we're building and this whole world of diversity and equity and inclusion in the video game industry. So thank you all, thank you the viewers for joining, and
muchas gracias a toda la persona que lo ha visto
have
y
fun at the
a
virtual
todo el mundo.
E3 conference.
Así que estoy acabando ya. O sea, cuando voy a hacer la siguiente de los indies. Para esto un segundito, se va a permitir. Vamos a volver a la imagen. Estamos. Pues no sé, me parece una conferencia muy interesante. O sea, sí, esto se va a llevar una hostia increíble. La gente le va a echar una mierda que te cagas. Va a haber un montón de bulla por Twitter. Pero me parece que es muy importante darle voz en estos eventos a estas cosas. Muy, muy importante. Y a mí me ha parecido bien, o sea... Habrá sido también un movimiento de TikTok, vamos a engañarnos, para quedar bien delante de la agenda política, obviamente, porque TikTok lo que le interesa posiblemente sea quedar bien, pero ha llevado a gente que sabe, a gente que trabaja día a día con esto, a gente que se interesa mucho por esto, y ha llevado a hablar y que dé su mensaje, lo cual me ha gustado mucho, mucho, vuelvo a decirlo. Y que de hecho posiblemente esto me lo vaya a ver en un futuro tras resubido para empaparme bien de lo que se ha hablado. Está interesante, sí. Y eso, y me parece muy importante darle un espacio en el E3 a esto. Muy, muy importante, pero sí. Le ha caído mierdas por todos lados a esto. Está ahora mismo Twitter un poco reventado en este sentido. El chat era, el emote la persona durmiendo constantemente para... No había otra cosa que expande eso. Y no sé, pues que me recuerda un poquito cómo funciona la industria, ¿no? Que la industria siempre vamos igual. No, ahí no tiene mucho más. Voy a comparar cuando nos toca el Indie Showcase. Un segundo. No se puede esperar con la comunidad. Ya es una pena. Gente que dice que, pues, no sé. Me parece muy bien que se dé un espacio aquí, o sea. Y sobre todo porque no es que no hayan dicho nada. Entonces te esperas un anuncio de un juego y te hablan de esto y puedes una sección porque tú para juegos. Es que han anunciado que esto iba a ser un panel de debate. No hay más. Deja de ver un segundo que estoy comprobando. Aquí está. Cuando tenemos la siguiente. Vale, la siguiente empieza a las 9, así que vamos a hacer una cosa. Vamos a cortar el directo y vamos a volver más tarde, ¿vale? A las 9 ya volvemos. Con los indies, esta vez sí, cosas de jueguitos, ¿vale? Esta vez sí. Porque queda una hora y una hora aquí. Si tuviera gente acompañándome, pues sí, pero estando solo, difícil. Nos vemos dentro de la horita y seguimos cubriendo el E3. Muchas gracias por pasaros y estamos atentos al Twitter, que os avisamos en cuanto volvamos. Hasta luego.